on down to the cafeteria to grab yourself a hot slice.
I go by the username Jeremiah Cimmerian on both the SCP Wiki. No, I think on my my YouTube channel is Dr. Cimmerian. I struggled with that for a little while. I was like, if I do that, are people gonna think I'm a real doctor? And so I was like, should I use it or not? And then I was like, nah, it's fine, because you gotta go with something simple, or otherwise people are never gonna remember your channel, and it's already hard enough to remember Cimmerian
or a Forlorn Foundry.
That was a little contextless. Let's be fair.
Yeah,
I remember that, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like an SCP channel, doesn't it?
No.
But all right.
Well, I mean, I think for you it was smart to do Dr. Cimmerian because people also might know you just for the character.
Well, there's that too, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you're the fish. Anything Dr. Cimmerian related is going to be there.
Yeah, it's funny. I've watched numerous other authors try and start channels. Some of them are still working on them, I think, but nobody seems to have the stick-to-itiveness that they need. It's a rough in the beginning.
Yeah.
You're doing just as much work as I'm doing right now, but getting no feedback, no response. Basically, you just got to keep doing it until you do. And sometimes that might.
Like,
yeah, you might take a year for that.
Like, what are you at? Like 50-ish thousand now? 60,000?
60. Oh, yeah, it was yesterday. I hit 66,666.
Nice. But like,
it doesn't matter. I was just like, that was that. I don't know why, but I've been watching for that number for the longest time, just to see it come up, and well, here we are.
But I think when we first started talking, you were like just that, like you just reached 10,000.
Yeah, it was something along those lines. I remember when we first started talking, you were like 250.
Yeah, we were nothing. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that was an interesting dynamic, because you went from 250 to like, and you're asking me for advice, and I don't fucking know, but here's what I did, and then you jumped to like twice or three times in the beginning. You're way bigger. I don't think you're way bigger, but you're bigger now. Two times my size, I think. What are you, like 120-ish?
Well, right now we're 150. We just
150.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But it's definitely slowed down because we haven't done a big video for like a year now. So, but I'm not sweating it. I'll be like, once I release new stuff, then I can worry about it. As long as I'm not bleeding people, it is what it is.
Well, the thing is that as long as you stick to, it doesn't matter what your schedule is, I think, as long as you stick to a schedule. If you promise a video and say, hey, I'm going to do this, then that's a different thing. But you don't even do that, really, right? You just kind of
say, hey,
roll
we're
with
working
whatever.
on this. Yeah. I'm trying to change that. We're trying to, once we learn the 3D animation, it's a different ballgame because I'm not relying on actor schedules anymore or locations. It's much more just like me and Nick and whoever else we're collaborating with and their schedule.
Not to mention that you can, I've said I've watched a couple of your things, and I think we've talked about this before. It's like you got good actors sometimes, but also mixed in there is a lot of like, questionably quality actors sometimes, and you can do a little bit better with that with animated because you can really pick and choose your voice actors.
And like I can do multiple takes. I don't have to just be shoot it this one day and that's it, which I hate. Yeah. I really hate that. So I'm really hoping the YouTube space opens up soon, because then what I want to do is mix live action with 3D animation. That's like the end goal. So.
Oh, so you're doing 3D animation, because you listed a bunch of programs earlier, and I'm like, I'm not really sure what those are, but I think I remember Blender is like a 3D animation program.
Yeah, that's like the biggest free one. Highly recommend it, guys. Just saying. Shout out to Blender.
We're not sponsored, but
no. Fingers crossed.
One day.
Have you been writing anything? Any like bigger stories? Any like SCPs?
Not for the wiki. No, they passed a rule recently that you're not allowed to do work on the wiki that you've been paid for.
Oh,
so
really?
I kind of just stopped writing for them entirely, because it's the question if given the option of continuing to essentially donate my writing to a website or get paid for it, I decided that it made more sense to get paid for it. It's not a huge deal, because like Okay, so the SCP Wiki is definitely an amateur writing community. And when I say amateur, I don't mean lower quality. I mean not paid.
Yeah.
Really, it's for hobbyists and such. I've been thinking about this, and I probably will do a video on it sometime soon. But when I come off of hiatus in a couple weeks. But yeah, it's. I think they've started getting to the point now where like they kind of teach people to devalue their work in a way. Like, oh, just give us your work for free. And there's nothing wrong with that in the beginning, especially if you're just learning. But after a certain amount of time, I feel like a lot of people would want to graduate from that. And that's not necessarily always true, because SCP Wiki wants to have already has a stranglehold on anything you create. Because once you do, it's gone forever. It belongs to everyone. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that either when you're learning. But eventually, where are you going with this? Are you just enjoying it as a hobby? If you are, that's cool. And there's nothing and I'll say this. There are things on the SCP Wiki that were created by hobbyists / amateurs that are just as good as anything a professional writer has ever written. Yeah, because I think there's not a quality cap, but there's a point where you go, it's like with IQs, there's a point where you go beyond a certain point, and it doesn't matter how much higher you go, because it's just so high to begin with that it's impossible to tell the difference between this level and this level, because there's so few things that reach that level anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and despite that fact, those people want to remain hobbyist writers for forever. They don't want the stress of, having to compete commercially, and that's fine. But I'm not that person. I'm a different person, and that's fine too.
Are you working on so I don't know if you know Wildbow. He's one of my favorite online authors. But so what he does is he writes online novels, serials, and he basically just has his own website for each novel.
Now, I've just been doing a lot of ghostwriting and writing for other people's videos.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say, or is it?
No, really. I've definitely done some work with SCP Illustrated. I think that's. Hold on. I think that's the only projects that I have done that are publicly I've worked on.
Gotcha.
The rest of them are a little less public, so yeah.
That's cool though. I'm glad you're.
And some video games, but that list is long.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm almost surprised you didn't have this set up earlier, because you've been a part of the community for it feels like forever, honestly.
Well, it was set up earlier. It's just now they've made a rule that I can't do it on the wiki anymore. I just used to write stuff and get paid for it, and if I wanted to, I could just post it to the wiki. Not that I would, ever do that, because that's against the rules. But the option was always there.
No, gotcha.
And once they did that, I had to make a choice. I mean, they're basically saying you have to make a choice. Spend your creative energy is not bottomless. It's something you have to budget one way or the other. And if I have to budget it between the SCP Wiki and elsewhere, I know where that energy is going. Well,
speaking of that, I don't know how much you're gonna divulge, since this is premium patron content. But what's kind of your creative writing process, or what gets the creative juices going for you?
Oh, I don't have I do have a process. It's have an idea, think about the idea until I'm ready to write it, and then write it. There's no set I have a very, very good memory, so it's easy for me to just hold on to an idea and think it through until I have something that I like. Every once in a while, I'll get stuck on the beginning of it, and an idea that's overly. And this is when I know an idea is overly complex, because you'll start thinking about it, and you'll think about it, and you'll have a great beginning, and then the next time you have to sit down and think about it, say you're in the shower or laying down and about to fall asleep, you still just think about the beginning only. And you're like, oh, this idea is too complex.
I've been there.
This is too long. But yeah, that's basically it. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Writing is a job. So, being creatively inspired or excited about an idea or any of those things, it's a luxury. It's nice, but it is not in any way necessary. My creative process is have an idea, think about the idea, write the idea, regardless of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, even if you work in TV, you basically get hired onto a job. Doesn't matter how much you love the show or whatever, you still have to like write out the character arcs and the storylines and all that stuff. Doesn't matter how you feel. I mean, for me, I've noticed my writing process is I write down the idea. I have a horrible memory, so I have to write it down right away on like my notes, and then I kind of just will have like a week or two of just like adding ideas to the like pot, and then what I'll do is I'll just sit down, write a full draft. And my first draft is always the most generic, boring version. It's just very cliche and like unoriginal. And then I end up rewriting it like 2 or 3 or 4 times, depending on the stories lately. And it just slowly, I think I more try to like, once, I don't know, like a lot of people talk about this. When you sleep on an idea and you wake up the next day and kind of see it with a fresher take, it's like almost like when you're learning a new language or things where like things stick and settle after you sleep a day or 2 on it. Or even a week, depends.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know if this works. Well, this could work for you because I've looked. I mean, nothing you do is longer than 10-ish minutes, I don't think. So we live very luxuriously in the sense that we can write something in one setting. Mm-hmm. That's a huge deal because everything I write is either flash fiction, not even short. I mean, I've written some short story stuff in one setting, but you can do it in one setting. You can't you could write a novel in one setting if you were crazy, but yeah. So the idea that we can just so my process probably works really well for that, but I'm sure if I were to try and do a novel or something a little bit longer form, I'd have to alter it a little bit. I'd like section it out, I guess, probably be the easiest way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've been working on and off on 2 feature ideas that I know I probably won't make for a long time. Well, now that I'm learning 3D animation, one of the ideas is kind of like a cyberpunk idea. Actually seems a lot more feasible. Just because a lot of the guy I'm learning from, Ian Hubert, all of his Patreon and stuff, he gives away like all of the sets and the models he does, and all the stuff he does is cyberpunk. So it's like, how convenient. But I've definitely been... I'm a very visual thinker. So like a lot of times I'll get like a setting or a character design in my head, and then that's where like the story will go off for original ideas. SCP stuff, it's a little different because I'm kind of picking back on other stuff, but I've been trying to lean more into just throwing in like Evan does, where he just throws in completely original stuff and just says it's SCP. Mm-hmm. So mix it.
Yeah, I think the idea is you get into the stuff that you want to do too, because like when you're doing SCP stuff, if it's not your own stuff, sometimes it can feel a little make work.
Yeah.
Rather than if it's not like you're phoning it in, but it can be very difficult to do it justice the way the creator wants, because the creator has an idea in their head.
Yeah. And
they can see what they want. Like I'm a very visual person too. Like I can see, like this a hilarious thing. I have no art skills whatsoever, but like I know what I want things to look like. Mm-hmm. Like I can visualize the painting that I'd like to create. I just can't create the painting.
Well, I mean,
so yeah,
I'm the same way, but 3D learning, just like really basic 3D modeling, has helped so much with that, because a lot of times there's so many free 3D models out there. So what I can do is create like a little rough little set, and it's like very simple. I'm not actually doing that much work, and that alone will actually help me with like, well, you don't have to do this, but planning out shots and things like that. Where trying to draw like 3D space is so difficult. I don't have to deal with perspective or any of those things. So in a lot of ways, like it's almost like putting your little toys in a little space and like kind of giving a rough semblance of like, oh, this environment would look like, or things like that.
There's what the best example I can give is that I have currently playing a couple of different D&D campaigns, and like I know exactly what I want my character to look like, but obviously I can't draw it.
Yeah.
But in the same sense that you can use 3D modeling, there's stuff like, again, not sponsored, just something I enjoy. Hero Forge, which allows you to create a miniature. They've also recently introduced coloring to your miniatures, so you can order them pre-colored. So I can go in to their designer and just create the character that I want to create.
And it's almost like an RPG character builder kind of thing.
You know what? Hold on. Let me just link you in the chat here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's see. Grab. Here is. Oh, there it is. So that's my D&D character right now, or at least one of the campaigns I'm playing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll just throw it up on the screen.
But yeah, it's like that. That's I can create whatever I want to out of it, and this is what he looks like.
Yeah, I played a little D&D actually. The beginning of the year. Do you know what Avernus?
Yeah, Descent into Avernus.
Yeah. So I was like, cool, I'm down. And then once I started learning 3D animation, so I think I ended up, around June, I ended up having to drop out because I was like, hey, I was talking to my DM, like, hey, like we've been doing this for a while now. It's been like 4 months. How much longer do you think we have to go? And she's like, oh, about a year. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Oh yeah, I want to get. Honest to God, I would hope for both of my campaigns to last for forever, but of course that's not going to happen. But yeah.
Well, as you can tell, I'm a newbie because I thought, it'll be like a 4-month thing, whatever. And I'm like,
oh, you thought there was an end. You thought there was an end point.
Yeah.
To it. I see. Yeah. No, that is not how it works.
Yeah.
But then again, if you're not like, that's the best way to put it. If you're not, how much were you enjoying it? Is the better question.
Well, okay, so for my party, I was playing with Jake. So Jake's still in the campaign, but they were heavy roleplay. So a lot of it would just be them talking over in a set. And like I personally was more of like, come on, let's go. I was more in for like the story.
There's different types of players.
Yeah, so I'm definitely I think that was part of it. I mean, really in the end it was a time thing because it was like I had to set aside a whole Sunday night every week. And I ended up being the one with like the least reliable schedule. So I was like, I'm not going to screw everyone's experience.
Oh, yeah. Scheduling is one of those things. Is like I'm pretty. What's the best way to put it? Strict about when it comes to my games. So if people stop showing up, like they miss a couple of sessions or even just a couple of sessions in a row, I'm suddenly like, "Are you serious about this or not?" Because I am. I'm going to be there. Like I said, I will set an alarm and I will get up if I have to do the thing that I said I was going to do at the time I said I was going to do it. That's who I am. But yeah, it's one of those scheduling is like, do you enjoy it or not? But to be completely fair, there are many different kinds of players also.
Yeah.
And so like, if you're not, that's not an indictment against your DM. It's not an indictment against you if you don't fit together. Sometimes that's true. You just don't, like this is a bunch of RP and that's fun. I like a little bit of that, but I'd also like to get on with it, please.
Yeah.
Or I'm not that kind of person. I really do enjoy sitting down and having conversations. So I mean, different players, different DMs. You got to find the right game for you.
Well, I had a really good DM. It was actually the first like good. I did try Pathfinder like back in college, and then I tried doing a D&D. I think it was the vampire one. I forget his name.
Vampire the Masquerade?
No, it was another one. He was like almost like Dracula. It's a
Curse of Strahd?
Yeah,
5e?
Curse of Strahd, which is also supposed to be a horrible beginner campaign.
I don't know. That doesn't seem like it would be bad for a beginner. It starts at level 1.
My DM was saying for a new DM, it's not good.
It's a super complex module.
And we had a new DM, so that was really rough. And then I was like, maybe I don't like D&D. But then I kind of realized, no, I just had 2 really bad games.
Yeah.
So that was like I actually enjoyed it, but yeah, definitely I think Jake was telling me, and I agree with him. I'd be better off with those like really short modules, where it's just like 4 or 5 sessions. And
they have a set beginning and end. Yeah. I get what you're saying. You want a story that You want a story that ends. Then that's not really what D&D is about, but you can get that out of some certain games.
Well, actually, a fan reached out to me and Jake, and they actually made an SCP RPG. Like I think it was like 2 different.
Oh yeah,
2 nights.
That person's been on my server, I think.
Yeah, but Jake actually just played it like last week, and he's like, "Yeah, it was actually pretty solid. It was pretty good."
Yeah, I helped him a little bit with some of his design choices early on, but he just kind of dropped off, and I figured, how projects are in the SCP community.
Well, we just finished it, so
that's good. You
should check it out.
Maybe it's different. Maybe it's a completely different system. But I did talk to a guy who was working on SCP RPG and had it very well fleshed out. I think he modified another system, or maybe created it from scratch. I don't remember. But yeah, I remember him talking about like para. What was it? We were discussing the various skills, and he had like a big old list of skills, and it was like para this, para science, para that. I was like, why don't you just make it all one thing? Yeah. Rather than have it a bunch of separate stuff. That was like one of the few things I recall. Now, I recall a bunch of other stuff too, but that's one of the major points I recall that I helped him with in his design.
And I'm just happy there's more like SCP RPG stuff. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's been around for a little bit, but I feel like only the past summer I really started hearing about like
You could
people
do
making those.
D&D. I mean, the thing is that like, I'll say this: 5th edition is a superior entry point. Like Pathfinder is fun, I guess, if you know the system. But like, if you have a group of, I don't know how many people, like 6 people, and all but one of them know Pathfinder, you're better off teaching everybody 5th edition than teaching one person Pathfinder.
Yeah. That's
how much simpler it is. And so, like, every time someone talks about Pathfinder, I just kind of like internally go, Pathfinder.
Well, I feel like
it's not a bad system, but it's just so complex.
I feel like it was good for when it came out.
Yeah. If everyone knows Pathfinder, you're good. You're good and golden. But like I said, if even just one of your players does not know Pathfinder, you're going to think, well, let's teach them No, it's so complex that you're going to be spending way more time than if you just said, does everyone get a D20? All right, we're good for 5th edition.
Yeah.
It's a one sheet character sheet too, like that kind of stuff, versus like 4 or 5 pages worth of character sheet. It's confirm your criticals. Just play the game. God damn it.
I'm going to end talking about D&D because this is where my knowledge runs out. I'm a fraud. I'm
that's
just
fair.
a newbie with it. I don't think I'm ever going to get super duper into it. I kind of just admire it from a distance. I feel like maybe when I retire, I'll do like a geriatric D&D session every week.
Also, you could just watch other people play D&D at this point. Like, there's plenty of really good streams that you just watch if you really had the free time.
I'm weird. I can't watch people playing video games, like things like that. I'm very much like...
It's not really the same thing. Not D&D. Yeah. I always suggest to people Critical Role, because that's sort of what got me back into it in an adult sense. Yeah. Like, I played a little bit as a teenager, but as an adult, I started watching Critical Role. And if you're going to watch it, I'd say start with Campaign 2, because in Campaign 1, they start in mid-story, and they're also converting their characters over from Pathfinder to 5th edition. Mm-hmm. By the time they finish Campaign 1, they've got a really good hold on it and the format and everything else. So starting with Campaign 2, and Campaign 2 is a brand new story with brand new characters, so it's just easier to start there. Mm-hmm. And it's a bunch of professional voice actors, so you can imagine the level of quality.
I have heard a little bit about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now. Actually, that reminds me. So we played over quarantine online. So Roll20, not bad.
Roll20 is easy. Here's an interesting thing I've learned about Roll20. I find it very easy to use as a player. Mm-hmm. I have multiple times tried to figure out how to use it as a DM, and it is so unintuitive. It's such a difference between how it is for a player. It's weird.
Which is like the commands, like how to put stuff in, like images.
Yeah, how to get it to work at all. Like how any of that stuff works. It's like, I'm sure I could find some tutorials, and I'm sure once I get into it, it would be like, oh, this is so easy. It's one of those things. Like everyone's like, it's so easy. It's so easy when you already know how to do it. Yes, but when you don't, when you're trying to learn it, it's like, ugh.
Well, if you ever want to get back into it, one of my friends is like very proficient. She's like DM'd multiple games on Roll20.
I mean, I've got plenty of people I've definitely got plenty of people I could ask to teach me how to do it, but it's I'm always like to learn things on my own.
Oh yeah, I'm the opposite.
You could, I've thought about running a simpler game, because there's literally 1-page rule sets. Mm-hmm. So like, was it Trash Panda? Is it Crash Pandas is one of the game types where you play as a bunch of raccoons, and Honey Heist, which is where you play as a bunch of bears, and it's literally like maybe 8 rules, and just roll this many dice, and that's. I wanted to play a Honey Heist game. Out of the set in the SCP universe, based off of the town that got fucked by bears, because I thought that would be hilarious.
You should go through with that.
Yeah, like that. I was gonna. My idea is not only that, but to bring in a bunch of SCP YouTubers and like play. It's because it's a one shot sort of still.
Well, I'm down.
It's like
if you do it, that'd be cool.
Yeah, but I gotta get the time. I gotta get the people together. It's just like so much work.
I know
DMing is so much work. Even with just even just with a 1-page rule set, it's still so much work.
Yeah, I envy those. I don't envy those people. It's almost like a part-time job, honestly.
Yeah, Honey Heist is like, You just roll a die, and it's like, how bear are you or how criminal are you? That's literally it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like are you doing it more as a bear? Or are you doing it more as because it's a honey heist? The idea is that you're going to go steal something.
That's cool.
Like, are you more bear or are you more criminal? That's it. Literally, that's all.
I'm down. I'm like really intrigued with this. I didn't know like because I've heard of like ones where it's like, oh, it's Star Wars themed or like things like that.
Yeah, they've got some really simple systems that literally, like I said, they're called one-page games, where the entire rules, like, and Honey Heist, you could fit a rule on half a page. It's worth of like, wow. Yeah, it's not a lot of rules.
I kind of like that.
Yeah,
I'm very into like really simple, almost like Werewolf. Or I mean, that's why I've been playing Among Us a lot. Just like really simple. Here
yeah, Among Us.
Concept, basic setup, and that's it. And my friends
played some Among Us on my server a little while. But I've actually set things up with. We have a server role over on my server just because it's how it can be difficult to coordinate games with a bunch of people if you don't like plan it out properly. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to plan that. I'm not going to plan an Among Us game, so I'm literally just like ping everyone with the Among Us role and be like, "Hey, who's up for a game right now?" And if we get enough people together, great. If not,
Has that like worked out? Because I've been like,
we got one game together.
The other day was like, "Oh, we should play with fans." I'm like. Maybe.
Oh, yeah. One guy, interestingly enough, I think one guy joined our server specifically just to play when he found there was a game going on.
Oh, yeah.
Because I only play with voice, too, because, like, it's silly. I've seen the game played with text only, and it doesn't make any sense to me.
I haven't bothered to see what that's like.
Yeah, it's a social game. You want to be able to hear people. And, like, some guy just shows up and was like, oh, okay, this is a new person. And then they started talking through the rules, and they're like, here's why I'm innocent. And I was like, and he was explaining like a legitimate like in-game rule that we hadn't considered, and I was like, okay, but it's definitely you. And he goes, what? And like for the longest time afterwards, he was just like, and we got him. It was him, and he was like, you got it right, but you got it right for the wrong reasons. And I'm like, people forget it's not just logic. It's not just logic and evidence. It's a social game.
Yeah.
If it how you speak and how you defend yourself and like why you're doing it matters. Even if you say something perfectly logical, you can still give yourself away.
I know, like for me, because I usually play with my close friend groups that are local, we almost don't even bother with all the like technical aspects. We just know. I've been friends with them since high school, so it's like, that person does that thing when they're lying. Or like, so then we'll play mind games, or like. When we're innocent, we'll act like we're lying, just so like for the few games down when we're an imposter, we like to kind of throw people.
Yep, it's the meta. Yeah, we had that. I realized that because I only played one like I don't know how many. It was like a couple of dozens of games worth in one session, but I got the sense that like two things. First of all, my hunches are usually right. I can't always explain why I'm right, but oftentimes I'm right about who it is and isn't. But they're not always right. So there were games where we lost because I was like, I know it's you, and I was wrong. But yeah, so there's a lot of learning about how the game functions, and then I would literally explain to people because they demand to know, and I realized maybe I should stop explaining to people how I figured out how they lied, because people would do the same things again, but just slightly differently to throw me off the trail eventually. Yeah, so.
No, keep it yourself. That's like a card up your sleeve. I can never tell people.
Well, you know how it is, though. Like I said, when you're playing, like, you figure it out. They're like, how did you know? And if you don't tell them, they're like, you just got lucky. I'm like, no, I didn't get lucky. That was skill. And then afterwards, I'm like, and then I just gave away my advantage. Fantastic.
I just say, you were sus. Just keep saying
you were sus. Yeah, my nephew he doesn't play Among Us, I don't think, but he's been watching a lot of videos of it. So now every time I see him, I pick out whatever shirt color he's wearing and go, yeah, purple's kind of sus today. I think I saw you vent. And he goes, do you play Among Us? And I'm like, sometimes.
We still have a running joke that like, oh, Mingy vented. We'll just like, that's one of my friends is Mingy. So like halfway through the game, we just go like, Mingy vented. And like meanwhile, he's like dead already or some shit. But
yeah. I've seen those things too. I had a game. One of the games I was playing, I was like alone. It was like an 8v1. And I was just because we were fine tuning the rule set originally, and like, oh boy, that was rough. I think I killed 5 people before they finally got me out. But
damn, still that's not bad.
Nah, it was a bunch of new players too. Not all new players, but it was a bunch of new players too. So, but eventually it was just a matter of time before someone was like, "Hey, I saw you going in this direction. And I'm pretty sure it's you." And I'm like, "I got nothing." You know, it's some you give up and you're like, "Fuck it, I'm done."
I'm enjoying it while it lasts. I know, like, I played Fall Guys for a little, and that's like off the planet now. I feel like no one plays that as nearly.
Yeah,
as
that
much.
Fall Guys fell off. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm a wordsmith. That's what I do.
Well, okay, so Halloween. I don't know about you, but I'm a big Halloween guy. Do you have like any?
I'm more of a Christmas guy.
Oh yeah, that's second favorite. But do you have any like big Halloween movies or like books or stories that people should read?
No, the answer is actually just straight
Really?
up no to that. Yeah, nah. Like even I've got the Nightmare Before Christmas poster on my wall over here. Spoiler alert: I've never seen that movie.
Bruh. Wow.
I just got something. Yeah, I just got something that would fit the motif of an
It's a
SCP
Christmas
channel. I mean, I
movie.
really. It is. I know. I want to replace. I've been wanting to replace that poster ever since I got it. It was supposed to be temporary.
Yeah.
But I haven't. I wanted to replace it with an SCP poster, and haven't found the right one for it yet.
I know Toad King makes a couple decent ones. Last time I
There are a bunch of, and then that's the thing.
Yeah.
I should say I haven't. Like I see a bunch of them. And I'm like, I want that one and that one and that one. And I can't pick.
Yeah.
And so I'm still stuck with this fucking thing. Not that it's a bad poster. It fits and it's nice, but yeah, I don't. No, Christmas. I like Christmas a lot, and I know that's a Christmas-y movie, but it's a Halloween-y too. And I don't dislike Halloween. I really do enjoy this time of year, just in general.
Yeah.
Because I really love the holidays, but I've never been a huge Halloween guy.
I was kind of like always into the weird dead things growing up, so it's like the only time of year where it's like, oh, my interests are everywhere. So
I just, as an SCP writer, some people are always surprised to hear this, but I'm not a big fan of horror.
yeah, that's right.
Like it doesn't excite me in any way, so it's just like whatever.
I will say I hate slasher films, and most people think slasher films when I say I like horror. So it's like an
No, I'm not necessarily thinking of. It's all horror, even good, like the good psychological stuff is just like
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just saw Annihilation recently. I don't know if you've seen that.
Which one is that one?
With what's her name? She was Padme in Star Wars.
Natalie Portman.
Yeah, so Natalie Portman's the main character.
Oh, right. That's an SCP-ish sort of thing.
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna
remember
say.
that. Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I remember the trailers and the reviews for it.
I'd say it's more like a thriller, kind of Lovecraftian horror, but that was like probably the most like cool. This would be like an SCP film, like 100%. So I'd recommend.
There'll never
that.
be a real SCP like movie.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be a fan. They'll probably, I imagine, at some point in the future.
Maybe a
if the
3D
SCP
animated film.
Yeah.
I think
Oh
that's the most
yeah.
realistic, only because you don't need to pay for $1 million set and all that shit. But,
I've said it before, and I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. Not to say anything bad about your actors. You've had great actors on, but having it as an animated thing means your quality level will be higher on the acting because
there's
you
no excuse
can
on my side.
pick and choose a lot
yeah,
better.
like that's on me then. At that point,
Yeah.
no pressure.
That's on. Yeah, it is on you. You're like, you can be like, no, this sucks. Do it again. Do it this way.
Yeah. So.
Instead of, oh well, we're losing light. I guess that's it.
Yeah, which is good. It's like no more excuses, no more things.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, like, obviously, don't fall into the perfectionist trap, but you can get close.
I try to keep the. I'm sure you heard this, the 80% mindset. So it's basically like don't do your best, do your 80% best, and then basically because usually by the point to get it up that next 20%, it usually takes way more time and way more nonstop, never ending. Like, oh, I could fix this or I could add this, and you should just kind of cut it off at that point. It's better because I'm much more like balancing between quality and quantity, where it's like I'd much rather have like 5 good films than one great film that probably wasn't even great because I spent so long not creating anything else.
Yeah. That's I'd rather have well, let's see. I'd rather have the Avengers than Justice League Snyder cut. Because I mean, like, if you give somebody an extra $70 million and 3 extra years, they're probably going to be able to come out with something.
I'm sure Avatar's
I'm guessing.
Gonna be great.
What's that?
I'm sure Avatar is going to be great. Avatar 2.
It's just one of those. Like, I saw. Did you see that? They're throwing $70 million at Justice League.
No, I thought that was Dead in the Water. I thought that was
the Snyder Cut. Yeah, no, that's a real thing now, for real. And they're throwing $70 million at it for reshoots and such.
Man, when will DC learn?
I don't
Never.
know. I'm so angry. It's like, and I have no right to be angry. It's their money, but who? Filmmaking at this point is an investment.
Yeah.
It's not really so much it is a creative endeavor, but it's really an investment opportunity. Yeah. Right.
It's very similar. Well, here you go. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a rant now. Who looked at Justice League, right? A movie that cost upwards of $400 million to make, which brought in just under just a little bit over $750 million, right? And said to themselves, yeah, that's a movie I'd like to throw more money at. Yeah, let's throw...
A lot of people don't realize if it doesn't make like double the money, it's usually considered a flop in Hollywood.
It is. Yeah. No, that lost... That in the initial run, that almost certainly lost money because the theaters get a cut out of the... It's a whole thing. And not to mention that it's not really even counting the massive marketing that they had to put behind that movie, which was huge. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I did this on Twitter. I said, and then you make Deadpool for, was it $58 million? And it made $850 million. Yep.
Exactly.
The fuck is wrong with these people? Just stop it. Just stop it.
Look, I mean, I know some people who invest money into movies and they're not like film people at all. They're like, ooh, that seems cool. I want to be known as the guy who puts money into that. I want to be the next.
Oh yeah, get your producer credit. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's literally that. Those are the kind of people that usually throw money into films. So if you just say, "Hey, we're making Justice League," they're like, "Sure." You know.
I mean, I guess you can find them, but I'm sure there are smart investors too, as well.
Totally,
like, yeah.
But I'm saying there's so many of those that you can like kind of grab them.
$70 million for this. I'm like, I think if you gave, even though I know fucking nothing about filmmaking, if you gave me 3 extra years and $70 million extra dollars, I could make you a Justice League movie. So I don't understand why you need Zack Snyder for anything.
I feel like he's just like really good friends. It's a lot of it is just like, oh, I know.
Yeah. He has very bro energy. Like that's all I'm saying.
I've actually never seen him talk. I just assume that because of like everything he's made.
Oh right, yeah. He's very bro energy about him. Yeah, when he was talking about Superman, about how like if you think Superman doesn't kill people, you don't know Superman. I'm like, this motherfucker. Or Batman doesn't kill people in Batman v Superman. It's his weapons and car kill people. The car that he's driving kills people, and his weapons kill people. Okay, I don't think you understand how death works, which is fine, I guess. Or I should say, I don't think you understand how killing works, but cool. I mean,
even like in like the Dark Knight or some of the Batman comics, it's like, okay, that's kind of stretched. This guy's like not walking again.
Oh yeah. And the thing is that like, I think in some sense, the amount of like they should do. I don't know if they have or they probably have. DC Comics, I should say, not DC movies, but DC Comics are actually pretty good about this kind of stuff. But they should do some stories about how like Gotham City probably has a much higher disabled population.
Wow, yeah.
You know, and these are already people who are like not particularly well off.
Yeah.
So it's they're already having financial issues because they're fucking criminals, and now they also have to deal with the fact that they can never walk again. So or a CTE story about the guy who's just gone up against Batman too many times and now he has CTE. Like that, I mean, and I laugh about it. Those are very serious issues, but like being able to do those stories is fun.
I mean, I'm just thinking now, like Batman's basically like a burden to the state.
He is.
Everyone's
he
on, like,
really is
now and all that.
Like, you need him against Joker and the Riddler, these big criminals who apparently Gotham PD can't do fuck all about. But like the average thug, instead of taking them in and he beats them up first. Like, no.
What do you think of the new Batman film though?
That's the one with Robert Pattinson, I think they're working on. I don't know about DC anymore. Like their best movie that came out was Wonder Woman, and it was only okay.
I like Joker. Like for
but it's not set in the same universe. It's a standalone movie.
It's still DC.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, but we're talking about when we say. I know you asked about DC, but when people ask about DC, what they're really usually asking about is the cinematic universe.
Well, so
and whilst
is the new Batman in that universe though?
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be separate.
Okay, Flashpoint. Are you familiar with Flashpoint in the DC comics? It's essentially a universe. I'm gonna very simplify here. It's essentially a universe-wide reset based on the Flash running so fast he travels back in time.
Oh wait, I've heard about this like a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, he saves his mom and causes a bad future instead of what he thought it would. Yeah, so that's the reason why the Flash movie is gonna have. Oh shit! What's his name? Michael Keaton. And Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson's Batman's in it.
Okay.
So what they're probably going to do to fix as many problems as they can is do like a timeline reset sort of thing.
So your theory is basically that Robert Pattinson is the time point alternate.
I would guess, because I mean they've already announced the Flashpoint the Flash movie is going to be Flashpoint, and it's going to have all three of those Batman actors in it. There's no reason for you to put the original, like from the old school Batman, Michael Keaton, and Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson in your movie if you're not doing that. Personally, I can't imagine why you wouldn't.
Well, hopefully it's like Joker kind of woke some people up, and if they're doing an alternate thing, they're going to go for a completely different style, like directing style and all that. So like,
I mean, yeah. And also they could do 3 Jokers, which is another DC Comics storyline where there's literally 3 Jokers.
I mean, this is
like 3 different aspects. So one of them's a little bit more violent, one of them's a little bit more silly, like a Cesar Romero old and 1960s Batman sort of guy, and then one's more of the like media, like one's more of the Heath Ledger-ish.
Okay.
Doesn't have to wear the tattoo on his forehead that's fucking says damaged on it to understand that he's
Jared Leto. Yeah.
Maybe it was a good. I don't know if he was good or bad. There wasn't enough of him to know. Like that's just a badly edited stories I've heard. Look, you know this. Nice. You watched this. That was a badly edited movie. The script was terrible. You haven't?
So many reviews of how badly edited it was, though.
Yeah. Oh my god. Like the script was. This is the funny part. You have a bunch of really good actors doing their best with a terrible script, and then after the terrible script, it's edited together like by a bunch of, to be fair, movie trailer people.
Yep.
DC missed the memo on the different. I did a video on this recently, but DC missed the memo on the difference between moments and story. Like you can create some really cool moments and especially visually, but if you don't have any kind of, if they don't interconnect, if there's no interconnective tissue to create a story out of them, then all you have are a bunch of moments. It's the difference between, and I use this exact example of Zack Snyder's 300, which is essentially just a collection of really cool moments with a very simple story that has a through line for it and works because of that. And fucking Batman v Superman or Justice League, which I'd say Batman v Superman is a better example. Justice League is a bad movie for a variety of reasons, but Batman v Superman is a trash fire. It's really bad. It takes bad and says, no, you know what? I'm going to one up you, and just continues down that line. And Suicide Squad is even worse.
Really? I didn't know it was considered
even
worse than Batman Superman.
Worse. I don't know if everyone would consider it even worse, but I personally consider it. I mean, like, they even mess up the basics of the callback, right? Like, the rule of 3 is when you're going to do a thing. You set it up, you remind the audience, and then you pay it off.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's it.
This guy's got a fucking Captain Boomerang. He keeps a pink unicorn in his you probably even saw it in one of the trailers. He keeps a pink unicorn in one of his sides of his coat. And it shows up again, and then he gets stabbed in that exact location. And you think that's going to be the payoff, obviously. Like, if a person who understands story is going to be like, oh, okay, I know where they're going with this. Like, and then he opens it up, and it's a bunch of money with no setup. And you know in your brain, you're like, okay, there were two versions of this joke, right? They filmed two versions of this joke. That
so
probably the setup for that version, it was on the cutting room floor, but I'm so angry with that movie. It's so bad. Like if you can't even do a callback right, what are you doing? Like, anyway.
I definitely get a weird thing now where like a lot of movies I love nowadays, if they just have really clean, tight writing, that alone will make me love the film. I've had some where like it's a good movie, it has tight writing, but I end up loving it and think it's a great movie, while my friends are like, oh, it was good. But I'm like, oh, you don't understand. Like, it was so well written though, and like the way it was paced and structured, like things like that really adds like a nice little cherry on top for me.
Yeah. This is Katana. She's got my back. I advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims. That's a character introduction.
Yeah. Is that from
exposition? It is.
Yeah.
It's my least favorite character introduction ever.
This is why I'm grateful that I'm a visual thinker, because it's hard for me to write in dialogue. It's much more easy for me to tell things visually. So I'm like it's almost like harder for me to do exposition just by like, oh, let me just explain the story or things like that.
Well, exposition is a necessary evil in writing, but
yeah,
the way it's handled is important,
It's how you do it.
Yeah.
Like some of my favorite films have tons of exposition in the beginning. Like there's a good way to do it.
Oh yeah, and if you look at old movies, like the really older movies, they usually would have like a scroll at the beginning. Yeah. Like the Star Wars thing, by the time Star Wars came out, that wasn't really a thing anymore. Yeah. So it was kind of it's funny to think of it like this, but that was a throwback to the old style of movies where they would have a scroll come in and be like, so-and-so is working as a newspaper editor and blah, 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 blah. And he is, this, that, and the other thing. And he just got married yesterday. And then it's like, okay. And you get the backstory in your head already. Yeah. And then they open up on this guy and you know who he is.
I remember they don't do that anymore. In, like the 20s, especially when like audio still was just coming in. You'd still get a lot of that, like just a page of exposition in the beginning.
Yeah. I think even, what's it called? One of the more famous examples, I think that happens in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, does it? I actually don't remember. I haven't seen the movie in so long.
It's been a really long time since I've seen it, but I have in my brain, I'm like, I recall at least like a little, not a whole wall of it, but at least like, a little bit of exposition. Because like if you realize it starts off, if you realize it starts off, it's like there's some backstory to it, because like the lady or her dog bit the lady. And like that's the impetus for the story, so they're like a little bit of who these people are first.
I know. Fun fact: I met one of the Oompa Loompas when I was a kid. So it's the one that hands the lollipop to the Oompa Loompa that hands the lollipop to Dorothy. So fun fact.
That had to be an interesting set to be on.
Yeah, he had some pretty neat stories. I mean, basically, he said it was like the most like really lovable, friendly set because. A big part was because there's so many other like fellow midgets so they really kind of ended up bonding together after that movie and kind of creating a little like actor community for like people who are special needs, which was like, oh, it's actually really wholesome considering the 50s. I feel like especially if you're a midget or dwarf.
I think you mean little people, right?
Yeah, I don't know the right term. I think midget's actually not good.
Yeah, it's really
for little people. So
I think it's little people. Pretty sure it's little people.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna say little people. Sorry, guys. But that was cool. Was like they were able to kind of create a community in the 50s, where especially like all they could get were just like playing weird children like stunt doubles, or doing like leprechauns and elves.
Mm-hmm. And, like,
So
God, when people say that about elves in my brain, I'm like, no, that's not an elf. It's not what elves.
I think of the Lord of the Rings one too. How's quarantine for you? I feel like it's got to be pretty easy.
Yeah.
Nothing's really changed on your end.
That's it.
Yeah.
Not difficult. Like I'd already mostly been quarantined before, so it wasn't a huge deal.
Are you guys still like locked down?
I mean, this is Alabama. I go out. I mean, there's a convenience store across the street. I go out there every once in a while and get something to eat with a mask on, and I'm the only person with a mask on.
Yeah. Cannot relate.
Yeah, where are you at?
I'm in New York, so like.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So people who not only are there more rules about it, but also people actually follow those rules, because if they don't, actual things will happen to them.
I mean, we just.
I'm pretty sure we're under a mask mandate, but it doesn't.
You wouldn't know, yeah. That's fine. No, yeah. I mean, that's understandable. There's literally like over 1 million people where I live, so.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it makes a huge amount of sense. Yeah. I mean, I technically don't even live in a fully rural area. I do live in rural Alabama, but it's real close to suburbs / city. So yeah. So I mean, we live in a county that has. I live in the same county that Birmingham, Alabama, is in. So it's not like we live out in the middle of nowhere from nowhere. I've been to the parts of nowhere of Alabama. Those are fun.
Yeah. Like what?
Took a trip up to Winston County one time, and the bank across the street from City Hall had the big, like, a huge Confederate flag. And the funny part, now see, that's funny in and of itself, like the fact that they put that up there. But there's something that you don't know that makes it even funnier, and it's the same problem that I have with West Virginia being like Confederate pride and everything.
It was like a Union Bank or something.
Winston County seceded from the Confederacy to stay with the Union.
I never knew that. I didn't know that was a thing, like in Alabama.
Yeah. I think it may, I don't know if it happened elsewhere, but I know it happened here, and it happened in that county. And so I go in, and City Hall at the capital of that county, across the street, it's this giant ass Confederate flag. And I'm like, I don't think that works here. I mean, I know it's kind of rural in the middle of nowhere, but also it's like I said, it's like West Virginia, which split off from Virginia.
That's why it's West Virginia, yeah.
During the Civil War, because they wanted to stay with the Union, and then like now people living in West Virginia, like, that damn war of Northern aggression. It was your war. You were part of that.
Like, it's literally not your heritage.
Oh my god.
It's rough. But and then I know that's a whole. I mean, the whole thing with Mississippi, like, they literally have it in their state flag.
I don't think they do anymore.
I think they just changed it, but like for like years, for a while they did. Oh man, now
I mean, at this point, technically it is heritage, but it's not as big of heritage as they think it is. It started in like the 1950s and 60s, the Confederate flag as we know it today. It's not from the Civil War. I mean, it is from the Civil War. They did adopt a thing from the Civil War, but it wasn't used
or something. I forget. Like,
it's a rough approximation of the battle flag of Virginia, I believe. Okay. Something like that. It also showed up in various other locations, but it was never the flag we're talking about was never the official flag of the Confederacy. I don't believe. Closest they came to having they had a bunch of fucking official flags. They couldn't decide, which was all right because who the fuck cares about what they wanted to have as a symbol? But I think the very first flag of the Confederacy was a flag that was used in the early 1800s by the Republic of West Florida, which was a real thing. Oh man, the Republic of West Florida.
Wait, like tried to secede basically, and then just the middle.
No. This was okay. In the early 1800s, late 1700s, there was a deal. Spain used to own Florida, and a bunch of English settlers came down and settled in what's right now the panhandle of Florida. And they thought that they were going to, first of all, they seceded from the Spanish colony, and then we're like, we're going to join the Union. And the Union was like, nah, bruh, we're just going to be Florida. We want the whole thing. Yeah, there was for a brief period of time a Republic of West Florida, and it had its own flag, and the Confederacy used that flag early on for. I don't know if they just stole it, if it was like they just like cool design, let's use that, but they did. There was nothing relating them together. They just decided to use it.
The one I saw the most, that's like most accurate. It's mostly white.
Yeah, there's like a almost fully white flag, which didn't work for obvious reasons in a battle in the 1800s. They not the smartest people in the world, apparently.
Yeah.
Hey, let's use a white flag as our. Yeah, no, that doesn't. Guess what happens when you put a white flag?
A black flag, then? Like,
I don't. Yeah.
There's a rule.
And you think it'd be like, oh, that's good for I said that one time before, and someone was like, oh, it'll be good for tricking the other side into thinking you surrendered. First of all, it's a war crime today, anyway. And second of all, in older wars like that, not World War I or World War II, even in World War I and World War II, if you think your side is surrendering, you tend to give up.
Yeah.
Which was a problem for the Confederacy. Oh man, the Civil War. That's a fun topic. The only way
talking about with people who like grew up in the South, because for me up here it's just like whatever. No one really cares about it that much.
Right. I mean, New York City has a strong history of things. I mean, like the events of the like the draft riots in New York City.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, that was wasn't that part of the gangs in New York? They kind of talk about that.
Oh yeah, it wasn't gangs. Yeah, but that was a real thing that happened. That wasn't made up. That was a real thing that happened.
I'm really rusty. I mean, like I think of like a lot of more Revolutionary War stuff here because we have like the Battle of.
Oh yeah, because you guys were occupied, right?
Yeah, Long Island was occupied. Then they came from Long Island, then Manhattan. And basically, there's a lot of cool spy stories on Long Island.
I would imagine they started with Boston. That was in the beginning. They basically occupied Boston before the war even started, and then and then New York was like the next target, I guess. Mm-hmm. They hit the biggest of cities that they possibly could. New York was also the capital of the U.S. For a little while there in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it was New York, then Philly, then D.C.
There was a deal made. What was the deal? What was the deal made? They moved it to Washington, D.C. They made it out of Virginia and Maryland as a deal for the South. But what was it the South gave up in return? Oh, right. National Bank.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, okay. The northern states. Oh, God. We're doing history lessons, apparently. But, okay. So the southern states owed. It's not important who owed what. The important part is that the states independently held debt.
Yeah.
Right. The federal government didn't hold any debt. And since they didn't hold any debt, they weren't really able to get any credit. It's complicated the way that system works. Mm-hmm. So the idea was that all the states would basically give up their debt to the U.S. government. And the U.S. government would collectively own all of the debt instead. And so they wouldn't have to pay that money back, which would be a good thing. But also, they'd owe technically money, and they would be as a union and be like, hey, we want to leave the union. Like, well, you can't leave the union because everything's, whatever. And the South was so not on board with that. And the deal was made, I think, I'm always bad with names. I'm great with stories, but I'm bad with names. I think it was Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, who were strong opponents politically, made a deal to basically say, all right, fine, but we want the capital.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and so they put it in the South.
Hamilton wanted the bank. That was his idea.
Yeah, it was. Yes.
Yeah.
I've never watched Hamilton, I should watch it on Disney Plus at some point because I really want to see that, but I haven't quite gotten around to it. It's the funny part is, this is interesting. I'm a huge history nerd, in case you haven't been able to tell. So the funny part about Hamilton becoming as popular as it is that all this stuff that I'm telling you is no longer as esoteric of knowledge.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So I don't get to be like, hey, I bet you didn't know. Mm-hmm. It's more like everyone, like half the people are like, yeah, I saw that on Hamilton too. And I'm like, no, it's not. Okay, fine. Like I used to love to tell.
Still like blows my mind. It just seems like it doesn't work on paper.
I know, right? I've watched. I will say I've listened to a couple of the musical numbers. The one that I really really enjoyed was the King George one.
Oh yeah, that's
the You'll Be Back. Yeah, that's it. But the Aaron Burr shooting Alexander Hamilton thing used to be like a fun anecdote that nobody knew about, and now everyone knows. And I'm like, oh fuck! Now I need to have an actual personality. God damn it!
One thing that a lot of people don't know and the show doesn't go into is that especially near the end of his life or right after the war, Hamilton was very still into the idea of a monarchy and wanted George to be a king.
John Adams was pretty close on that too. Yeah.
So I feel like no one ever really talks about that, and I think that's really interesting.
Alexander Hamilton is, I will say this, he did a lot of stuff for this, making this country work, but also he wasn't exactly a great person.
No.
And there was a lot of things that he wanted that were not good for wouldn't have been good for the Republic. And I say this knowing that Thomas Jefferson has its own baggage, of course, but thank God Thomas Jefferson was there to be an opposition. I will say the interesting, this is so reflective of current politics too, is that like, even though Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson essentially fucking hated each other and disagreed on every issue, when it came down to it, they still respected each other. Mm-hmm. And that was very important for the founding fathers. Because this is the thing. All the founding fathers knew each other really well. They'd known each other for years. So when Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson were competing to be, who's going to be president and who's not going to be president because of the fucked up system we used to have. Used to be whoever got the most electoral votes was president, and then whoever got second most electoral votes was vice president. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So until they amended the Constitution, but so Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, and again, I don't know how much of this is in Hamilton or not, but Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson both got equal numbers. It was supposed to be one of the electors was supposed to not vote for Alexander Hamilton. They were running together as a ticket, and one of the electors was supposed to not vote for a Hamilton. So that Burr.
Burr, yeah,
was not supposed to vote for Burr. It was a Thomas Jefferson Burr ticket, and he didn't do that. He voted for Burr anyway, so they had an equal number of electoral votes. And when that happens, when there's no one has a clear majority, it goes to the House of Representatives. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the House of Representatives, each state gets a vote in the House, rather than so the whole collective delegation makes a vote.
Yeah.
And Alexander Hamilton had a choice: throw it to Aaron Burr or throw it to Thomas Jefferson. He had basically the power as part of the Federalist Party. And what ended up happening was he had the quote that sticks with me to just demonstrate that respect for your opponents is important. He said, "I'd rather have a man with the wrong principles than a man with no principles." Because Aaron Burr was a jackass. Like, he was willing to do and say anything to get power. And everyone knew it. And so it was like, the funny part was he was ostensibly an ally of Alexander Hamilton and his party. Like, he agreed way more with him than he did with Thomas Jefferson. But also, he was a shitbag. So he's just no,
I never knew that.
We're not doing that.
I didn't know that was the reason. I mean, he'll go on to shoot him, but yeah.
It was a whole other thing. Man, Aaron Burr's life. They should make a movie. They should have made it about Aaron Burr's life, because he's a shitbag. But it's so interesting. And what happened after he lost that governor election? Because the whole point of the duel was Alexander Hamilton wrote basically a scathing editorial about Aaron Burr, and Aaron Burr was like, "I'm going to duel you for it." And then they, did the thing, threw away the shot, whatever, the actual Hamilton stuff. But then afterwards, Aaron Burr went into the West and tried to raise an army and build his own country. Right?
Yeah, I never knew about this.
He went into the West and tried to build an army, and he actually was put on trial eventually for treason, based on the fact that he tried to overthrow the government of the United States and build his own country.
I never knew about
Aaron Burr. Yeah, right.
This.
So yeah, he kills Alex. So this is the jump off, because he has a whole life before this, which is really interesting too. But that's mostly intertwined with the other founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, et cetera, et cetera. But after he kills Hamilton, he loses the governorship, or he was governor. No, he was vice president at the time. I know that for sure. I don't have to think about that. So he was vice president. Thomas Jefferson said, "Fuck you," because they were running together the last time around. And then instead of going, no, Thomas Jefferson is president, that was a mistake. You shouldn't have, that elector should have not, whatever. He goes, no, I should be president. And so Thomas Jefferson the second time around was like, "Yeah, go fuck yourself. You're not my vice president this time around."
I don't know.
And so he's like, "Fine, I'll run for governor of New York." And he loses horribly, because everyone's like, "Hey, you're the guy that killed Alexander Hamilton, right?" Hamilton was hugely popular, not just with his party, but just in general in New York.
Yeah, I mean, that's his town.
Yeah, that was his town. And so afterwards, he loses the governorship and he has nothing. And he just He didn't get convicted of treason. He came pretty damn close. He was working with a general. I can't remember the name of the general at all, but he was working with a general who basically turned him in and was like, because he was working with him for a while, and then the general was like, you know what? I just realized this is treason. That's probably not good.
Oh man, yeah, man, they should do like a sequel just following like Aaron Burr or someone else. That'd be really...
Aaron Burr has an interesting. He's a shitbag, but he has an interesting life story. Very, very interesting.
I'm glad like we ended up on this. This is like the cool fact of the week for me.
Yeah. Look up Aaron Burr. Read about his life. Like as much fun and as much more of a I still not a hero, but as much of more of a hero that Alexander Hamilton is, Aaron Burr's life is, I think, more interesting as a story. And it's much less known is the other half of it. Like the only thing that people know about him is his interactions with everybody else. Yeah. Like his own independent life was interesting.
Do you want to write a draft for a Broadway show?
I don't think I'm quite to that point yet. I don't know if I maybe I will one day write a play, but I don't know. I'd rather, honest to God, I do enjoy writing, but I'd much rather just be an actor.
Yeah, like, really? I don't know that.
Yeah, it's the opposite of like others. I'm sure there's plenty of actors out there like, I wish I could, I want to create my own stuff and write. And I still want to do that. But like, I would love if most of my time was spent either acting or voice acting. So, like the one part I haven't got a chance to do it yet. One day I want to be Iago from Othello. That's my dream role, because he's the original Joker. Like,
really?
Like when they ask him, like, why'd you do all these terrible things? He just goes, I don't fucking know, because I wanted to. He literally has in the monologue with the audience where he's like, not a monologue, but a soliloquy to the audience. And he's like, you could say I'm screwing over Othello because he's black. You could say that I'm doing it because he promoted Cassio above me. You could say that I'm doing it because I think that he fucked my wife. But the honest truth is, I don't really give a fuck. I'm doing it because I can. And it's just that I love the character so much. He is such I love shitbag characters because they are so interesting.
I mean, yeah, No Fury. It's a good example.
Oh yeah, that's it's a good example. I guess I write them sometimes too, but yeah.
I mean, do you feel like it's because, like with writing, you're kind of building and bringing something to life? Do you feel like acting is the next step of like bringing something to life, or just the instance of it?
I think it circles back to D&D a little bit too, because I think the idea is you're creating a character, right? Yeah. Like what's on the page is what's on the page, but when you actually sit there and you're like, you stop for a second and you can just enter into the mind of the character that you want to play and react as they would react. It's pure somehow. Like the text is the text, but 3 or 4, you could have 5 different actors playing a character and play them completely differently and play them very well and be engaging and interesting. That is in itself an act of creation. So I don't know. I enjoy that more than actually writing the words. I will write the word. I write the words myself sometimes because it's easier for me because I can't necessarily find projects to be act in. Yeah. So it's easier for me to just create my own projects at this point. But I would love if I could just do the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I know literally for a fact, we're going to need voice actors for an
that's true. Yeah.
Thing. So I'm definitely going to keep you in mind. I'll try to.
That's why I'm
a shitbag.
It's why one of my favorite. Well, not the shitbag thing, but one of my favorite roles that I've done is it's very short, of course, but was playing Dr. Ham in SCP-049 because nobody fucking recognizes me in it, at all, unless I mention it to them. And I mention it all the time because I love it. People are like, "You love reminding people of that, don't you?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." Did you know I was Dr. Ham in SCP-049? But I love it because people don't know it's me, which means I've done the job I'm supposed to do as an actor. Yeah. Even though it's a small part, it's short. Nobody recognizes me in it, which means I fucking did it. I did what I was supposed to do.
That's cool. That's an interesting, because I know some other actors who are like, they want people to know it's them, because it's like, oh, then
You do. You so do want people to know it's you, but you want to have to tell them. I think, personally. You want them to have to be like, wait, really? And then be like, yeah, it's me.
Well, I feel like if you want to really simplify it, there's character acting, and then there's like main protagonist acting. So I feel like with character acting, it's like I can blend into any. Actually, no, it depends. Like some character acting is like I can blend into any role and you'll never recognize me. And then there's other character acting where it's I play one character and that's it.
Yeah.
Ever. So I feel like that's like the two sides of the coin. You're definitely. I feel like what you pride yourself on is like I could be anything and no one will know it's me.
I also feel like if I ever were to get it like heavily into acting, I'd probably be the you play one character type.
Oh, really?
Honest to God, because I just have a personality and a voice that seems somewhat distinctive. I think anyway, and it just feels like I would probably get pigeonholed into being a particular type of asshole.
Probably, honestly, the way casting networks work,
yeah. But I would still do a little bit of stage work where I could fucking get my actual creative energies out.
I mean, I personally love when you see an actor who always plays that one actor and they're just doing something completely.
Oh yeah, I love seeing. Yeah, and some people break out of their typecasting that way. Yeah. Like they'll do something that it's really successful and like really like outside the realm of what they're known for, and suddenly they're like, oh, this person can, what's his name? Bryan Cranston, great example. Yeah. Used to be the silly comedic dad after Malcolm in the Middle, and he played that kind of character in other stuff. And then he does Breaking Bad, and suddenly he's no longer that character. He's whatever the fuck you need him to be.
Yeah. I feel like Robert Pattinson with Lighthouse is a great example of that too.
I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: I don't think I've watched Robert Pattinson in anything, but I know what you're talking about regardless because I've seen. Yeah.
All that.
Yeah, I've never watched him in anything, but I've heard people talk about how he's a brilliant actor. I've heard this about what's his face, Hayden Christensen, and like the few things he did that weren't Star Wars. That he was actually a really good actor, but like he only did a few. I mean, I should say he's still an active actor, but he's only done a few other things of note.
I thought he retired.
But did he fully retire?
I think he did for at least a little bit. I know for a fact I don't know if he ever got back into it, but I know like there was a point where he did retire.
Yeah, but he's definitely done other stuff, and that other stuff has apparently been much. Well, I mean, look at the script he had to work with, but regardless.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you had all these like A-list actors and they all came off like bad B-movie actors, you had Liam Neeson.
There's a problem, right? It's like that's my Suicide Squad problems because like these are really good actors who are really embodying the role that they're playing as best as you can expect them to, and then they're like having to say stupid shit like all the time.
I mean, I forget his name, the guy who played Count Dooku, but like he has like
Christopher Lee.
Yeah, Christopher Lee is like an amazing actor. He's done a huge range of so many different types of. I think I forgot the movie. It's a good Halloween movie, but he's in like a vampire film.
Oh yeah, he plays as a vampire. It's probably one of them Dracula-ish movies. I think he plays as.
It's old, but like that's a good one for people. Now's the time to watch it.
My favorite anecdote about Christopher Lee is the Lord of the Rings one, where they're like, so this guy it's a deleted scene. It doesn't show up in the actual movies, but you can see it in deleted scenes online if you really wanted to. And I'm sure people who own the box set, that's probably there somewhere. But so they're like, Wormtongue's going to stab you in the back, and they do the scene, and he's like, and Peter Jackson, you know the story. Peter Jackson's like, that's not what that should sound like. You should need to sound like this, and he's like, no. That's what a person sounds like when they get stabbed in the back. What do you do? How do you answer that? You're just like, cool, okay, yeah. Moving on. I think we got. Actually, you know what? I think we got it. Actually,
like I think the reason why is because he said like in World War II he actually like did stab someone.
Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, Ian was it Ian Fleming and him and a few other notable names were part of a very secret like intelligence agency whose jobs were to go around and kill and steal. The guy that created James Bond was also part of that.
Oh yeah, no surprise there. That's crazy, man. I mean,
yeah, he's like, no. That's what it sounds like when you stab somebody in the back. It's fine.
No, I'm just thinking like Mad Jack and all these like crazy like World War II stories.
Oh yeah,
that's a whole nother. Well,
oh my God, World War. What's that one guy who? Oh man. I watched a YouTube video about it, so my knowledge is not full, but it was like this one guy who managed to take an entire town by himself by just
I think that's World War One.
No, it was maybe, but there was World War II too. Yeah, because it was against the Germans in World War II. But yeah, he kept showing.
Yes. It was like in the middle of the night, right? And he kept
random
hours. And,
he was supposed to rescue a guy, I think.
Yeah,
and then he just decided he was going to take on the whole time, and he like captured like a couple hundred Germans or something insane, like that. Yeah,
wasn't like over.
And just walked them back to his lines.
Like it was like they had to clear that town to move past this.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's a really fun rabbit hole. There's like so many movies that are yet to be made with those characters, like real life characters. I know for a fact.
Oh my god, yeah. You know, there's a movie that needs to be made in, like, I should say, I'm sure it's been made in Russia, but there's a is it the Mendeleev house in Stalingrad, where like a single house in the center of that city, when the most of the city was conquered by that point, not all of it, but like they had taken over most of this. Germans had taken over most of the city. But a single fucking house with an anti-tank gun on its roof managed to hold out for really until they were relieved, until the Soviets took back the city.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they had underground tunnels where they were like getting supplies in and out and people in and out, and like they literally like they stopped being able to bring tanks in because the roads in and out were littered with tanks that had been destroyed.
That's crazy.
Like these people, they spent like it was like 200 days, I think, doing this, just keeping this one house in the middle of Stalingrad out of German hands, and the Germans fucking couldn't take it.
Wow.
And like there's a lot of
Russian like propaganda film or something.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure the Russians made it, but I think there needs to be an American movie made about it one of these days, just because it's such an amazing. Like I love amazing stories from history. That's one of the things I really love. The stories that already exist in history that just are untapped. Yeah, they're so great.
I mean, I love hearing a lot of the World War I ones because I feel like so many people forgot about World War One. But, I mean, especially growing up in school, like we talk about World War One, we just talk about like the causes, and then we kind of just say, oh, and then this happened, and then we move on.
Oh yeah. And the causes they list are never the actual causes either. They're just like, here's what the textbook creators have said is the cause, and the people who approved these textbooks said were okay.
Yeah, I mean, they made one of the most interesting things to ever happen in humanity be exceedingly boring. And I'm like, how do you botch that up? Like, I think, to me, it's one of my favorite periods of history in general, because it's literally the old world meets the new world. It's like, in my opinion, one of the most critical changing points in human civilization.
Well, what you do is, if you want to really make it boring, you make it about numbers, you make it about dates, you make it about names, and you forget the fact that there are stories. Right? Like, we could talk about Andrew Jackson all day, and Andrew Jackson is a fucking douchebag. Was a fucking douchebag. But, like, his stories are so interesting, and once you hear them, like, I feel like you may forget them, but you're, like, somebody brings it up again, and you're like, oh, yeah, I heard about that. Because it's like, okay, what's the best example you can give of that? Andrew Jackson, you could talk about the Trail of Tears in this abstract way, or you could talk about his service, how he went in 1812 in New Orleans, all these other things, or you could tell the story of Andrew Jackson. Yeah, and there's a story that my story that encapsulates who Andrew Jackson really is the time that a crazy man shows up in Washington D.C. with a, you know what I'm talking about? Shows up with a pistol in two pistols in Washington D.C. Thinking that Andrew Jackson is what's preventing him from being king of England, and he goes up to Andrew Jackson and fires off one of the pistols, and it misfires. And Andrew Jackson does what any sane person would do in this situation and jumps the guy. Yep. Not just, I mean, they talk about how he beats him, which he does do, beats him with his cane. Yeah. But he had to jump him. He jumped him first, knocked him to the ground, held him down and started beating him, and then beating him with his cane. And then the guy pulls out a second pistol, and Andrew Jackson, the insane fucking person that he is, doesn't move, doesn't run away, lets him put it right up to his chest and pull the trigger again. And it also misfires. Yeah, it jams. Yeah, it also. The problem was the dude was crazy, and when he bought his pistols, he bought them for basically he bought essentially dry weather pistols for the time period. And they were wet. And it was a rainy day. Washington D.C. is not a dry weather area. It's very damp.
It's built on a swamp.
Yeah, it's built on a swamp. But yeah, they had to pull the president of the United States of America off of his would-be assassin and then take him to the hospital.
I mean, this is the guy who fought with pirates, literally. So,
yeah,
Don't
Also,
mess around.
huge douchebag. But
Oh yeah, I mean,
you can say that as many times. I can talk about Andrew Jackson as much as I want to, but I always caveat it at the beginning, end, and several times in the middle. Huge douchebag. A terrible person. One of the worst people who has ever been president of the United States.
I mean,
and that is saying something.
So
yeah.
Doesn't get better than that. Well, worse.
Ugh.
Not better. But yeah.
But the stories are still interesting, and you remember those stories, right? It's because, like, I saw the look on your face when I mentioned the crazy. You're just like, I know that story.
Yep.
That's how you teach history. You teach history with stories. That's this. You. When I talk about the stuff that I'm excited about in history, I don't think of myself as a historian. I think of myself as a storyteller.
Yeah, 100%. That's why.
That's how you got to be.
Yeah. I mean, I've really shout out to. You should watch. If you don't, but people in general watching, highly recommend Extra Credits because that's how they teach history. It's definitely through more of a story and characters, and it's like they have a nice, simple little animated style to it, so it's very digestible. And then what's cool is if you really like the subject, they do like a bonus episode where they talk about here's all the things we kind of skimmed over or adjusted. Here are all our sources, so you can literally read in depth into it if you really like a certain subject. But I also like is they do very, very global. They don't just stick to just American or just European. Which a lot of English-speaking historians tend to do. Which, I mean, it makes sense.
Right, yeah.
That's where they're from.
I had a hilarious idea recently. I don't remember what I was watching on YouTube or something, but you reminded me of it just now. And that is to pick a day in history. It doesn't have to necessarily be a particularly... I think it was Twitter, actually, that I saw this, because somebody was talking about how each day of 2020 will be worthy of a PhD in 50 years. Like, you just be an expert on a particular day of the fucking dozen things, the crazy fucking things that happened in those one particular days. But I was thinking about that as a legitimate thing to do. Like, just become an expert on one day of history, everywhere in the world, everything that happened. It's a huge undertaking, but it's still it's possible.
Maybe
you know what I mean? Like it's. Yeah,
so much
definitely would probably be more of a modern era thing because you're talking about like remembering like if you go back more than 200 years, the amount of data available is significantly less. So it's significantly less. It's way easier if you go back far enough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in modern era, you could make a whole you could make a whole subject out of a single day at this point because that's how much data and information there is out there.
Yeah, because you can also talk about how like data and information, everything is moving faster and faster each year compared to like, I mean, if you want to go back to like revolutionary, I mean, the reason why all the electorates for the Electoral College are in, I think they're all in Washington. They used to all be in Washington, D.C. is because it would literally take months to half a year.
Sorry, I got an alarm going on.
No worries. But it would take like almost half a year to like even get the votes in and have all the people vote on the president and all that stuff. So that's why like nowadays, I think that's part of why, on top of why everything's such a dumpster fire, it's just like there's no time to just slow down. It's always now. It's always go, 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 go. So I feel like...
I want to talk about the problem with the current political system is that like it's easy to say we've become too polarized. We've always been polarized.
Yeah. I
think it's the difference between what we think of the opponents now and what we thought of our opponents then. Mm-hmm. Because it used to be like, this again doubles back on the previous thing when we were talking about Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and Aaron Burr. Like, I'd rather have the guy with the wrong principles than a guy with no principles. Mm-hmm. Today, we just assume anyone who disagrees with us has no principles. We just assume that anyone who disagrees with us has malicious intent. Mm-hmm. Like, if you disagree with me, you don't want what's best for this country. If you disagree with me, you are deliberately misrepresenting your views to try and get as much support from other people as possible. You are a liar. You're a terrible person. Instead of, maybe you genuinely believe that. And maybe we need to discuss why that is and start working on trying to, like, come to a, like, we can continue to disagree and still, have actionable legislation based on what we both believe. Like, it's possible to, and this world is the other half of it. The world is, or our political system in general is built on incremental changes. Yeah, it's always been built. I mean, like, I honestly think that's the reason why it's sustainable. Incremental changes. You look at any kind of new democracies out there, and this is true of the United States as well. It's not incremental changes. There are big titanic shifts from time to time. The United States was really bad. John Adams almost turned the United States into a dictatorship with the Alien and Sedition Acts. Like he's one of the founding fathers, one of the most important founding fathers, but he almost turned this country into a dictatorship. That's a real thing that happened.
Yeah, for people who don't know, that's like you can't criticize the president or certain political figures, right? Yeah. So. Yeah.
It was worse than that, but yeah, like he was going to arrest anyone who disagreed with the government. But so when you look at new democracies, this is a real thing. This is a thing that happens. And it's not just that; there's not good enough protections for minorities, which is also a problem in the United States early on. Yep. It's something we developed incrementally over time. So democracy does not solve problems. Democracy creates tons of problems. But I still support it. I still think it's probably one of the best things. But the United States is all about incremental changes, and you've got plenty of. And I'm a Democrat. I'm not gonna. We've gotten to the point now where we're post neutrality for our influencers. I think personally, I think you've got to take a stand one way or the other, or else you're helping support tyranny. But. And maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not saying everybody has to take 100% a stand, but I personally feel that way, and I have to just stop pretending like, oh, I don't care who wins. I care a lot. But a lot of people on the left who are people I generally agree with on things like, social programs, how the government should work, and et cetera, they believe if it's not titanic, instantaneous change, it's no change at all.
Yep.
Like the idea of and this is true way, way worse on the right. I shouldn't say it's worse, but there are many, many, many more people on the right who also believe the same way.
I mean,
it's more, it's more of those than there are on the left. I think people on the left are more likely to compromise than the people on the right at this point. But, and then maybe that's just my own biases entering in.
Yeah.
But ultimately,
I feel like maybe 4 years ago that's the case, but I feel like now.
It's getting bad. Yeah. It's getting, well, I mean, you have to. It's like fucking what the hell else are you gonna do? It's like you're like, all right, well, let's meet in the middle. Okay, so by meet in the middle, you mean give me everything I want, right? I said meet in the middle.
That's kind of what happened with the Obama presidency. Where
it was. They kept trying to compromise. Let's meet in the middle. There was no compromise. It was absolute and unyielding, and that's why I believe that. I agree. I think that at this point, there's no real options. You have to be absolute and unyielding back until the other side gets their shit together.
I mean, you can't play nice if they're going to take advantage of that,
Yeah.
So I'll let you speak.
Incremental. It's incremental changes. That's how a real democracy succeeds, and it sucks to be one of the people who is oppressed whilst incremental changes are underway, right? That absolutely sucks. But I don't feel like a democracy can be stable if it's constantly undergoing titanic shifts, even if they're positive titanic shifts. Because what is a positive titanic shift today, tomorrow a new titanic shift may come along that reverses those issues. That's why incremental changes
consequences years in the future.
Yeah. Well, the reason why incremental change is so important is because it's permanence. Like, if you just make a rule and say this thing has to be tomorrow, everyone, this is how this works. The democracy falls apart. Your country dies eventually, very quickly. And when you set the precedent that literally these important societal changes can be instantaneously done, they can be instantaneously undone.
Yeah. I mean, people have always said, like, the reason why we have check and balance is obviously to balance everything out, but also to intentionally slow everything down in the system. Because I feel like, I don't know who said this, but like democracies or republics specifically, are intentionally slow-moving machines. Like, and that's like one of the main reasons why. And like, if you want quick action, republics are actually one of the worst. And that's why during wartime you end up kind of restructuring.
If you want quick action, you need a dictatorship. Yeah. That's what you want.
You need one man.
Republics are inherently slow, and they're supposed to be that. They're built that way. Yeah. And that's the reason why they are, honestly to God, there have been quote unquote dictatorships, because monarchies are technically dictatorships, like absolute monarchies are dictatorships. And those existed for thousands of years, but that was during a time of serfdom, and like that was a different world. In the modern world, that's not how it works anymore.
No.
If you want to have a stable government that works under the people because everybody's fucking talking to each other,
Yeah.
and is educated, that's another important thing, then you need slow incremental changes. Yep. Things have to happen over a couple of generations sometimes. And as I said earlier, that sucks for the people who are currently being oppressed. But I'd rather have the change be permanent than instantaneous and then 5 years later reversed.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean,
think about the future generations, right?
Yeah, we're at a really interesting point in history, I feel like.
I don't know. This fucking sucks. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Not on this. I don't think I've said it today, but when I talk to people about like faith and everything, like I don't have faith in almost anything, and but I have faith in the United States of America, and that's very gymnastic, I guess is the word for that, I guess. But like I believe in this country, and I just that faith has been shaken quite a lot in the last 4 years.
I feel like there was a really funny tweet I saw the other day where it was like someone like me in high school, and like you're reading about a cool historical event and you're like, oh, I'd love to like live during a historical event, and then it's just 2020 and he's like, get me out. Because
the worst insult is, or the worst insult you can give somebody is, may you live in interesting times.
Yes, yeah. Because it's just like, yeah, I mean, I feel like no one knows what the next 10 years are going to look like. Like, I feel like things could go so south or so
and they could work out perfectly.
Yeah. So I try not to sweat it. I just kind of remember I'm human. We can only know so much. We have a limited perspective in that sense, like there's no.
Well, maybe you are, but
yeah. What? Oh, you're not
human.
Yeah. Now you're making me think of Neuralink, and that's a whole other subject I don't want to get into. Oh man. Like, okay, I was thinking to myself, like, how like when you're young you think you're so modern, but I know for a fact like we're definitely the old hats that are like, oh, I'm never gonna let my kid get the Neuralink or like some sort of cybernetic implant, shit like that. I feel like that's gonna be.
I don't know what world I'm gonna live in like 20-ish years from now when I have my own kids. If I have my own kids, yeah. It's gonna be fucking. I don't know. Like what was 20 years ago versus what is now? The internet has changed so much. Just the existence of the internet has changed.
Zero? How many people recognize that? Dial up and all that.
AOL.
Yeah.
Remember AOL? MSN Instant Messenger. And when I was getting out of high school, we were like, we're all going to stay in contact because we all have MSN and that's going to be around forever.
Yep. Wow. I was a kid. I mean, there's like a 10-year age gap if people don't know. But like, I mean, I just watched, I don't know if I'm sure you heard about The Social Dilemma, that whole documentary.
No.
You should check it out. I have critique about how it's written and structured, but overall, the message and what they talk about, I mean, I'm sure you already know it as a YouTuber, but basically how social media manipulates you, how social media is the psychological stuff. And like, I knew most of it, but it was kind of nice to see like how you can apply this knowledge to your daily life. Like how you can, like, so what I did is I basically have a digital well-being thing on my app. So now I like have timers on certain apps so I don't waste half my day just browsing Reddit or stuff like that. But one thing that was interesting and that they talked about is like every social media like developer does not let their kids onto social media until like they're in high school, and that's like a hard rule that most Silicon Valley people have, and it's like there's a really good reason why. I mean,
it's also the fact is like what you decide to put. Like, this is the same reason why you should never film your kids.
Yeah.
Period. Regardless of whether they're okay with it, regardless of what benefit you get out of it, because they are not old. I'd say 13 or 14 is probably a good bet, and that's right around the time you get into high school. But like up to that point, they're really not old enough to make that decision on their own. Mm-hmm. They really aren't, to make the decision to put themselves out there to be public as a person.
Yeah.
And if you make that decision for them, it ain't good. That's all I can say is it ain't good.
Like for me, because it just happened because of the way technology was advancing growing up. I didn't get into social media until I was like 13. And that's only because Facebook growing up was only for college kids, and didn't exist before then. So I didn't have the option of going on Facebook or all these things. There really wasn't like a place for middle schoolers to hang out online when I was growing up.
Yeah. See, I graduated in 2004 from high school.
Yeah.
And I think Facebook was 2004, 2005-ish, but that was only for college for a little while there, for about a year. I think it was about a year, and then they finally opened it up. But
only that short.
I think, I could be wrong, I'm not 100% on that. But I think it wasn't a very long period of time where it was only for school. But regardless, yeah, we used to just work with, like, I remember IRC and all the other stuff that like, people still use IRC. Crazy people, but still. Yeah, I remember IRC and like that being our social media like playground for the longest time.
What's IRC? I actually don't know.
Internet Relay Chat?
Oh, that's like really old. Like,
yeah,
since the 80s, right? Into IRC.
Well,
like
yeah, I think it may even go back to the 80s, but
yeah,
I started on it in 2001, 2000-ish, maybe. I think it's actually, no, it's in the 90s somewhere. But regardless, the SCP Wiki still uses IRC.
Yeah, no, I remember they were talking about that.
They actually were really patting themselves on the back for starting their own server up, which is great, but also you're still using IRC. I don't understand. All right, like I've talked to them about, like, why don't you use Discord? Like, not me personally. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no, me personally once or twice, but I've also seen some other people talk to them about it, and they're like, but Discord's going to go away eventually. Which is, when you're thinking about it over a multi-decade sort of span, like, maybe. I mean, that's possible, but and with the permanence that IRC has, that's kind of like the bedrock of it. It's like IRC is always going to exist. So, which I guess is whatever. But yeah, no, I remember social media over IRC, getting to know people, learning lessons of not to have internet relationships when I was still in high school. Never, ever, ever do that. It's a bad idea.
A second.
Yeah. Just leads to bad things and drama. And you don't want either of you definitely don't want the bad things. You might want the drama. Some people do, but it's not worth it. Oh. Yeah. Learning lessons I learned in my teens. It's just no.
Especially with us when we were younger, it was like, I feel like it was so taboo to have an online relationship.
Oh yeah. Like it was such a bit, like it was, my girlfriend from Canada sort of thing. Like, yeah. Like it basically was like you had an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah. It was not a real
catfish or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still a little, like, there's still a little like trace of that still exists, but internet relationships are so much more prevalent and common, especially among teenagers. I should say between teenagers and people in high school, I should say. Mm-hmm. It is basically normal. It's normalized at this point. I think the adults still have the leftover bit of like taboo from the earlier times of the internet, where it was a little bit less considered acceptable, and that's the reason why it still exists. Is kind of a little bit like, oh, really? You've got an internet? Okay, like that's the parents of those kids right now are like, oh, really? Yeah, okay, yeah, you've got a girlfriend.
I guess my parents are so used to me having online friends now, because I've probably had online friends for like.
Online friends are fine.
No, because I remember I feel like in high school I would get shit for saying I have an online friend. They're like, oh yeah, you're like, how do you have a friendship online, things like that. Even
it's just that I personally think that like real relationships, like girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever your preferences are, they require so much more. What's the best way to put this? Commitment of your time and energy and like your personality that you can't really give to people like long-term over the internet. Like long-term relationships can work. That's totally true. But as someone who has had in-person and out-of-person relationships, they are not the same thing.
No, I'm close.
Not even friendships. They're not.
Yeah.
Like your friends online and your friends in real life are just not the same thing. They can be close, but they're not the same thing. When it comes to something as important as a relationship with a person, where you're both invested and like supposed to care about what happens to one another, having it as like a shadow of what it's supposed to be, just because that's convenient, it just doesn't. It just there's no it doesn't this or doesn't that. It just doesn't.
There's like,
that's all I can say.
There's only this. It's usually in the exception if it works out. It's not the.
That's not an absolute. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works for people, but
it's a small percentage. It's a
yeah. Well, the problem is once you say that, like everyone's like, oh,
I'm
so
the exception.
I'm the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the exception. They're not talking about me. They're talking about other people.
I mean, back to you were saying with like sometimes with online friends how it's different than in-person friends. So one of my friends, Gigi, she's actually the person who designed the Forlorn Foundry logo. But we met over Discord, and then eventually I ended up hanging out with her like a year ago. And so we share a lot of interests. Like she's a horror artist, so like we have a lot of like common interests, but like our personalities, like our energy levels and who we are as people were so different than us just being like in the same vicinity for like 4 days was like, whoa. We are not the same in person. Like she was like she's super low energy. She's like a cat. She literally takes like naps throughout the day. And I'm a relatively high intensity, high energy person. So I was like being calm James, and calm James was like high intensity. Oh my God, this person's overwhelming to her. So it was kind of funny. I found this really hilarious. But when I was leaving, she's like, James, it's a good thing we're online friends. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. So that's like one of my friends where I'm like, I'm glad they're my online friend. Like that's what makes our dynamic work so well. I feel like in person we never would have been as close, just because how we.
For me personally, it's a little bit rougher than that because I essentially I feel like it takes a lot for me to call somebody more than an acquaintance. First of all, like period. Because I think of a friend, like what I think of as a friend, I think a lot of people think of as like best friends. Like a friend is somebody you're willing to go to the wall for, period for me. So online friends, there's not a lot of that for me. But probably more than that is that I don't have really much of an object permanence for people I'm not around. I have it's weird. So I have a very, very good memory. For like interactions, especially personal interactions I have with people, like autobiographical memory. So unfortunately, I talk to you and I pick up exactly where I left off the last time I talked to you, regardless of if it was yesterday or if it was 2 years ago.
Wow.
Right? And I don't know if you picked up on that because we've gone like big gaps in between. Yeah. But that's I am as comfortable with you now as I develop a level of comfort level with people. I don't lose that.
Okay, no, I relate to that. Yeah.
But also when I'm not around people, I kind of just forget they exist.
I am 100% the same way.
Yeah. So, and that's really rough on online friendships or relationships, to be honest with you. But online friendships, especially because, sometimes you can go long periods of time and somebody's got shit they got to do and you just don't talk to people for a while. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I remember you.
Yeah. I think one way I caught, like, so for example, Gigi, that's my friend. The reason why we got close is because on Instagram, I would always post to my story, like, art I'm finding. So, like, we almost always had, every time I was casually scrolling Instagram, I'd see her stories or see art she's working on. So it always kind of gave us an excuse to talk to each other. So, like, I'll go for weeks without talking to her at times. And then, like, I'll see her posting artwork again. Or she'll, like, comment to something I posted. And it was just like, oh, and then we start talking and catching up all of a sudden again.
It reminds me of a girlfriend that I had a while back who, way back, because when I tell you the reason why that reminded me of it, you're going to realize how far back it was. But I used to be like, oh, there's this one song I want to get a copy of this one song. And she was really good at finding them. And then we would, she'd find the song, she'd give them to me on a CD or something like that. And then we would talk for a while and we would hang out and eventually, it turned into more than that. But eventually I got a Napster subscription.
Napster. Wow.
Yeah, super old. But eventually I got a Napster subscription and that broke the relationship because that was our one thing, right? That was our thing. Yeah. And it's rough to think of it like that. But that was it. That was the end of it. I was like, well, it wasn't the end of it. It wasn't like a snap, but that was, it went downhill.
Yeah. Man.
And she even specifically said when we were breaking up, we broke up like 3 or 4 times. You know how that goes. You break up and then you wake up the next morning and it's complicated. But so like one of the times we were breaking, she was like, did you do that because you don't like me? I'm like, no, I did it because it's more convenient than asking you, which wasn't much of an answer, but
oh my God.
It was true.
Yeah. Like, no judgment. I was not the smoothest with handling those tough situations when I was younger too.
I honest to God, I'm not at all embarrassed by that. That was the right response at the time. You got to be honest, fully, 100%. That's the thing. Another thing I've learned about my life, and it's the reason why I haven't dated for a couple of years now, is that a lot of people, and for me, it's girls, but a lot of girls think they want an honest boyfriend. You know what I mean? They think what they want is an honest boyfriend. Someone who will never lie to them, who will always tell them what they really think.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
No.
They really don't. And after about 3 months of this, no.
Especially you. You're wrong about this.
Yeah.
You're wrong about that. No. No. I mean,
Let me look at this in their head. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I really like is, I don't know if you know Sam Harris, but I really like his approach to honesty, where it's basically like, if you kind of just set up the, this is who I am, I don't lie, and like, instead of always telling the truth, what you do is you just, instead of lying, you just don't say anything. And then if the truth needs to come out, you let it out. I'm talking about for like small little things, not for like trying to hide giant secrets. I like that approach where it's like, if the situation calls for it, then yes, I'll say the dress looks fat on you. But when I compliment you and say you look great in the dress, you also know I really mean it, because I'm never going to just phone in a compliment just because.
But then that also assumes there will eventually be a point where you actually give them a compliment. Sometimes the truth.
But I'm very like, I guess, depends. But I can be very warm in a relationship, and I'm very free with the compliments. So I feel like that's just like a personality thing.
Like, my biggest problem with that has always been, what's the best way to put it? I will always, I mean, like, my brain immediately jumps to, like, if somebody tells me a story about, like, so-and-so was a bitch to me at work, I'm like, what's their version of the story?
Yeah, no, I kind of do that too, though. Yeah.
Like, I might not say that out loud, but in my head, I'm like, yeah, but were they, though? And then sometimes they'll tell me the story, and I'll be like, that's kind of your fault a little bit there. I mean, I'm not that blunt about it, but you try to get around to the point where you're like, maybe if you didn't do such, and then like, and you get the, why don't you support me? Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, like, and that's it's also should say it's way easier in person too. Like, both employers and girlfriends have gotten super angry at me over my phone policy, which is I never pick up. I don't mean I pick up rarely. I mean, I never pick up the phone. Huh. I will call you. You don't call me. Is my policy on the phone.
Off guard? Is it just like?
No, it's just I actually didn't get a smartphone until whenever Pokemon Go came out.
Wow,
which was
like
very recent.
5 years ago.
Yeah. I used to keep little flip phones or the little brick Nokia phones, little tiny bricks, because I just call other people. People will be like. It's funny when people when people ask this question, I suddenly realize how selfish they are, but also I'm being super selfish in the end anyway. So it's kind of evens itself out. But whenever someone calls you a bunch and you don't pick up and they go, what's the point of you having a phone? I'm like, so I can call other people.
I just text. I avoid
all. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, it's like I only really do heavy call stuff for work related things. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I mean, Discord calls and things, but
yeah, but you've got the girlfriends and you've got work, and that's about the people that you and sometimes not even my parents. I moved away from home when I was 20, and for about 5 years, like because of my object impermanence for other people, like I was just like I'd go for years without calling my dad.
Wow.
I like my dad. My dad's cool, but I just was like, okay, I talked to him yesterday, didn't I? Like. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago.
I haven't moved out, so... But I mean, I did have a thing where whenever I traveled, I just disappeared from the planet.
I'm back home now, so... Because that's how millennials do. Mm-hmm. But...
So, I mean...
Why are you kids not buying houses? And because you guys own all of them. That's why.
Especially where I live, we have like a super inflated real estate. I'm not going to get into real estate. History here, but yeah,
it feels like you want to. It feels like you really want to.
Long Island has a very interesting.
Oh no,
real estate issue. Yeah.
I've opened the faucet.
I'm not.
But yeah.
I'm ending it there.
You live in New York, so yes, there's a huge, interesting real estate story, I'm sure. But
Yeah. Well, especially with now, and like the first suburb was literally built here, so like that's how far back it goes. I'm ending it there, I swear. But
okay.
Because the Robert Moses Parkway. Okay. Anyway.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay, I get you.
Look into
that's a little too granular for me. I've got a wide base of knowledge, but the particular parkways of New York, not a thing I know.
Well, just quick, Robert Mars is the guy who heavily influenced how New York City and Long Island is like, where all the highways went and how basically cities and towns were built. So he was like the man who really paved the way for what New York would look like for the next modern era.
So it's his fucking fault. I got
you. Literally. It literally is his fault. So that's why it's
the guy whose fault it is.
That's why it's just like, it's not often you have all these issues just be one dude's fault.
Yeah, cool. Although if you think about it, like when it comes to city planning, like it's fucking difficult, and the fact that it works at all is, But then we're also like, hey, did you know that when you have big old skyscrapers next to each other on opposite ends of the street, there's weird localized weather stuff that happens.
Go to Wall Street.
Cool.
Like downtown Manhattan, that's pretty neat.
Yeah,
you get wind tunnels.
I've not personally experienced it, but I've read a little bit and learned a little bit about how that kind of works.
Well, it's trippy when it's the middle of the summer and it's a bright sunny day and there's no sunlight around you and you're outside. You only really get that in like just Wall Street, like the really bottom part of New York City. I'm sure Hong Kong is a whole nother story because they have skyscrapers everywhere.
They kind of have to. It's not a lot of space, but yeah.
Like every cyberpunk city.
Technically, New York doesn't have a lot of space, but they're moving. Like they still got a lot of west that they can go.
Yeah. So basically, like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York, like surrounding areas in New York, are also like part of the New York City populace. Like a lot of people who live in New York City.
It's weird when I remember when I was in high school and I was first learning about this, and I'm like, when people would use the words New York, sometimes they mean the state of New York, and sometimes they mean the city of New York. Yeah. And the city of New York is like, it's multiple states, so it's like New York, and then New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
Like Jersey City is technically its own city, like Hoboken and all that, but it really is like kind of part of New York City if you think about it. Like all the people that work there and stuff, they're constantly in and out of Manhattan. But
I learned more about that from, I think it was an episode of Futurama where they're trying to buy an apartment for Fry, and like because they live in New York, and they show him this beautiful apartment, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" And what's the catch? And they keep going over like, it's huge, it's 4 bedrooms, whatever, it's super cheap, and then at the very end, he's like, "And it's in New Jersey."
No, that's literally.
And he's like, shit. Nope. All right. Well, we can't go with that. We can't do that. It's like and it's in New Jersey is the from Rick and Morty. It's the planet that's made out of corn. We have to leave now.
I actually haven't seen. I'm so far behind Rick and Morty.
Oh man, that's
someone
an older
very
episode.
Early adopter of it. But yeah. Oh, that is an older.
That's
one?
a super old. Yeah, it's the remember when second season finale. I think it is.
Season.
Yeah, it's the one where they're looking for a planet. After Earth.
Okay.
And he's like, everything is on a cob.
Yes. Because there's like all these different planets they went to.
Yeah. Planet's amazing, but everything's on a cob. Or the other planet was like, everything is amazing, but the sun screams at you for 36 hours or something.
Yeah. I like that one. Well, supposedly people are saying if there was air in space, our sun would actually sound like that. It would be deafening. But
if there was air in space, then things would be super fucking weird.
I mean, but like if sound could travel through space. But I never realized that.
I love the idea that like people, I know what you're talking about, and you're absolutely right. But also, when people are like, if sound could travel through space, and I'm like, my brain immediately goes, that's not what sound is. That's not how sound works.
Yeah, it's not a sound ray.
It's not. If there isn't a medium, there is no sound, and if there is a medium, then the whole universe works completely differently. There might not be stars. So, if it was a unit, you'd have to have something. If there was, to be fair, if there wasn't, God, now we're getting into physics. But if there was a medium for sound to travel through, it would have to be. To have lasted this long, it would have to be uniform throughout the universe. And in order for it to be uniform throughout the universe, there would need to be no concentrations of mass. So there would be no planets, no stars, know anything.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
It would have to be 100% uniform so that a gravitational pull of any particular particle on any other particular particle was equal, so that it would be nothing would move, or else the medium that you're talking about would eventually condense down into something.
Yeah.
Period. And in fact, that's how the universe originally was, because there was no reason. I should say, when the Big Bang happened, and I'm not going to get into too much detail here because physics, but when the Big Bang happened, the universe was a uniform gas, period. Hydrogen, a little bit of, I believe, because of the heat, helium, but everything was uniform. So everything equally pulled in everything else. But during what was called inflation, which was a super, super fast expansion of the universe, little fluctuation. This is getting into the weeds. Little fluctuations in the quantum realm, because the universe was really small at the time. I'm making like this size, but it may have been bigger, maybe like basketball size. But little fluctuations in the quantum realm, where particles were popping in and out of existence, created random. What's the word I'm looking for? Random roughness, for lack of a better word, random changes in density. And then the universe underwent some inflation, which caused it to go from like the size of a basketball to the size of multiple, like a galaxy. I'm really reducing down here in like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. And those little pockets where the particles have been popping in and out were frozen in place and allowed for, because they were randomized, allowed for the coalescence of those gases into stars eventually. If it hadn't happened like that, we would have a medium throughout the entire universe, but also nothing would exist because there would just be the matter.
People say we're returning to that eventually. The even
those people
mass.
are wrong.
Really? Because I've heard like the whole thing is eventually everything will kind of just be like a soup of gas. Eventually, then it will come back to cycle kind of thing. But like,
there's multiple versions of this. There's the cycle, the big crunch that people talk about, but the big crunch isn't going to happen according to current understanding of physics, period, because there's not enough mass in the universe to cause it to collapse back in on itself. In fact, expansion is accelerating currently. In fact, we will never be able to reach beyond our local group of galaxies, assuming the speed of light is the upper limit for speed. Just because the amount of time it will take us to get to beyond that, those things are moving away from us, and they're getting faster as they move away. They're getting further, and as they get further and further away, they're getting faster and faster. So we'll never be able to get there in time before the universe makes it impossible. Beyond that, the end of the universe can happen in multiple ways. There's vacuum collapse, which is like, in a very simplistic way, the universal vacuum energy level is, say, not at where it should be. There's a step down, and the rules of physics would change in like a little localized area, and then it would expand at the speed of light throughout the entire universe. That would be the end of the universe, because it would be the end of the universe as we know it. Like, if the rules change, life can't exist, at least as we know it. So we would just instantly your brain will not have time to process that it has happened.
Interesting. That's really cool.
You're just gone.
I know about heat death. That's the only one I know about.
Yeah. There's heat death, which assumes that the universe won't rip itself apart. But eventually, because the law of thermodynamics is that, systems always become more and more disordered over time. And you need an ordered system. It's complicated again, but you need an ordered system in order to get energy to work. So it's got to flow from one place to another. If everything is equal, if heat is equal throughout the entire universe, then you can't get energy to transfer from one location to another because there's the way the energy flows. That could happen. But what's most likely to happen based on our current understanding of physics is the Big Rip, which is, I don't know the time periods for all of these because, again, numbers. But what's going to happen is that acceleration that I was talking about, where it's moving galaxies apart, eventually it's going to speed up so much that it's going to move stars apart from each other. And it's going to move literally the atoms apart from each other. God. That acceleration is accelerating I mean, that acceleration.
Yeah.
That expansion is accelerating. Period. It's not stopping. It's going to get faster and faster and faster, and eventually, atoms won't even be able to bond to each other.
Just get quarks, and then we'll rip the
What's going to
quarks
happen
apart
is an interesting thing. It's maybe 100 billion years from now. I can't remember the exact timeline, but we look up in the sky and we can see galaxies.
Yeah.
You know, really, really far away. As that expansion gets worse, the red shift, I should say, because the blue shift is when it's coming towards us. Red shift is away. The red shift is going to get so serious that the wavelengths, because red shifting is essentially taking your wavelengths and stretching them out. Mm-hmm. It's going to turn into a flat line. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a point in the universe where you're not going to be able to see beyond, say, our galaxy. And then there's going to be a point where you're not going to be able to see beyond our star. And eventually there'll be a point where you can't see anything because light is being stretched as soon as it's emitted.
Oh, I'm assuming that's long gone after that.
Well, yeah, because at that point also your atoms will be torn apart even. Yeah. There's a possibility like it'll go all the way down to the fundamental quarks. Yeah. And if we don't know for sure, we're pretty sure that quarks are fundamental and that you can't get it, you've got up down strange charm top bottom quarks. Bosons and leptons are the fundamental particles of the universe. But there's a chance that they're made up of other things. And if they are, as the expansion gets worse, those will also break apart. And if those things are made up of something else, those will also break apart until there is nothing anywhere that exists for real. Like it just endless black. Funny part is we call it an endless black, but you wouldn't be able to see it. You wouldn't even be able to see the black because if you existed in that area, you would just break apart into constituent particles immediately.
So that's a fun fact. That's actually why at the end of the movies it fades to black.
I've thought about the idea of doing, and I was going to write this as SCP, but I thought it was a great idea. What if the universe is just one really long take?
And it fades to black in the end. That's just, the physics proves it.
What if there's a director somewhere? And what if somebody screws up in the take, and the director's just like, cut, let's start over.
That's the vacuum shift.
Yeah. I just love the idea of doing an SCP where the universe is literally just a single long take from some visionary director in some higher level of the reality. And like somebody walks in the wrong direction or bumps into somebody and he just like cuts in immediately and is like, all right, that's it. We have to start over. And the universe ends.
It's like the
start over from the top.
Times a trillion, basically.
Times infinity. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this is a good point to wrap up. The end of the universe with the end.
Oh yeah, let's fade to black.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on, man. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great talking to you.
It's been a minute. Yeah. Thanks, peeps. We'll be around. Who knows who our next guest will be? But
I'm glad you guys tuned in for this SCP YouTuber thing and got a physics and history lesson.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in. I know things. That's what I do.
Look, if you're into SCP, you should be interested in history or science. Like, I think we hit someone's interest bubble somewhere.
Probably.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Peace out, motherfuckers.